Hello guys, in this video I'll be talking about how to draw the eyes, and I know that a lot of people are interested in how to draw an eye. So to start off, I drew one line, and I selected 2 points on that line where it would determine the width, like how wide my eyes would be. And then with the eyes, I used 3 planes to decide the top eyelid and 2 planes for the bottom eyelid. Something you might notice about the iris is that if someone is looking directly at you, the iris will never touch the lower eyelid. So after I drew the 3 lines you can say, for the upper eyelid and 2 planes for my lower eyelid, I went back and I redefined it, made it look smooth so that it wouldn't look really blocky. And now I'm just going to add extra lines to just show the extra realism and how the actual eye would look like. Now be careful that when you're drawing these outlines or these lines that would determine where everything would go, is that you don't want to press down too much on the pen. You kind of want to just you just need a rough idea of what everything would look like, so you really don't need to press down too much on the pen. On many eyes, there are a lot of reflections on the eye, and in this case, there are 2 reflections. The one on the right side is much more harsh than the one on the bottom. So, uh, with only one light source, the pupil won't be really narrow, because depending on how much light there is, the pupil can widen. Just make sure that for now the pupil will be the darkest part. It doesn't have to be shaded in really dark right now, but for that process I used a 6B pencil for the pupil and a 2B pencil for the iris. And this eye doesn't really have any particular color. It's a black eye, so um, well, not a bruised eye, it's a black eye, so the iris can be quite dark. Now that I have the sclera completed, I can use a blending stump to blend, just like how you can see what I'm doing right now. And then just make sure that the part right underneath the upper eyelid should be darker the than the main part of the sclera. Now the light source is really coming from kind of the middle, because the light source there is on the right side of the iris, so it looks like it's in the middle. So on the left side and right side of the sclera is where the sclera will be darkest, where less light will would reflect. So now I'm spending a bit of time to focus on the caruncula. Okay. So the caruncula is usually wet, like full of water, so you can definitely add a bit of light reflections. And then now that I'm done with the caruncula, I went back to the iris, and I'm just redefining the contrast of the pupil and the iris to make sure that the pupil is still the darkest part of the eye. So now that I feel like the lighting is complete, and the sclera looks okay, and it's light enough, I'm just gonna make sure that everything looks fine. So I'm just gonna go back with a 2H pencil right now. I'm going to redefine the upper eyelid to make it look even sharper and more realistic. Now it is very important to keep looking back. Take a step back from the drawing, look at it from a far perspective, see if anything looks off, because if you're drawing a really big drawing, it is very important to see that everything looks up to proportion. Now moving on to the outside of the eye. Sorry that the camera is moving a little bit. The outside is where the skin will be, right? And the skin can have many light reflections, but in this case, I'm just going to shade in a rough idea of what the shadows would look like. You can take a look at what I'm doing right here. It's very essential. The upper part of the eye is where most of the light would be. So the upper side of the eye won't have as much reflection as the bottom part, but the part next to the nose definitely be the darkest part of the skin, because like the nose is like a cave, and it won't allow any light to enter. So just be careful of where the light will enter and where it will not, and that will also determine the lighting of the skin. So now you can see that the caruncula and the wrinkle of this eyelid, of the upper eyelid, is very significant. So underneath the caruncula, I'm gonna draw one more line, and I'm just gonna make sure that there's also enough lighting to make sure that it makes like a wrinkly effect, so that it will add even more realism. It is also very important to just go back and add more definition to the tones, because as I said, it's like very important to add a lot of contrast to the drawings. And many beginners, or even advanced people, they make the mistake of not adding as much contrast to the drawing, and it would make the drawing look pale. So now I'm just gonna make sure that the skin looks okay, and the part next to the nose will be very dark, or the darkest. I just need to make sure that I'm not relying on the blending stump too much, because if I rely on the blending stump like too much, it will make the whole drawing blunt, very blunt. Everything will be the same shade, because the blending stump, like the purpose of the blending stump is to carry graphite to other areas of the drawing, and also to smoothen out the shadows. So if I was blending a line, the line would eventually disappear, because it takes away the graphite, and it will obviously stay on the blending stump. So if the blending stump already has some graphite, it can already be used as some extra graphite. Now, don't worry if you don't know what's going on right now, because if you just follow my steps and just feel like you're getting somewhere, it's very normal. And if you're a total beginner and you're finding it very difficult to follow along, just make sure that you're practicing occasionally, and with consistency, you'll be able to find that you're gonna get good at drawing eyes, or not just eye, just drawing in general, if you stay consistent with with just creating art. And with drawing eyes, it's definitely not as easy as any other part of the face, or it might even be the hardest part to draw of the face. And all it takes is just experience and practice. So before making this video, obviously I made a lot of mistakes, and I also had to practice a lot. Now, when I look at this artwork so far as a whole thing, I can see that the lighting here is not very evenly distributed. So now I would blend a bit more with the blending stump, and then I'll look at the areas where it needs more concentration of shades and tones. So especially the part right under the lower eyelid, where there's a very significant ridge where light will be reflected and where light won't be reflected. So I really want to add that detail, because again, it will add a lot to the realism. So now you see I'm blending the line again. I'm making the shadows a bit more distinguished, and then also the part next to the nose where no light can reach. I'm trying to add more graphite and more shades over there, to also to add a bit more detail. It's totally okay if you don't want to draw in the eyebrows. Just make sure that like you're drawing enough skin like around the eye to make sure that you know what's going on. The last part is to draw eyelashes. So what I do is to, I would place my pen right in the upper eyelid. So because I'm focusing on the upper eyelid right now, and I would just create really careful, like fat and fast strokes, but thin strokes, to create every single eyelash. Now, if you really don't have the time to do this, it's okay. You can create like a misty effect and then draw out a few lines which will help distinguish the effect of of a bunch of eyelids put together. So you see now I'm using a a 2B pencil with a blunt tip to add the mist, so that I won't really have to spend as much time to focus on every single hair. Now the 2B pencil can also be used for darker eyelashes. If you really want to, you can, but it's a bit blunt. I didn't sharpen it, but it's totally fine. As long as I create that really fast and slick strokes, everything will be okay. Now this step is optional. If you have a white pen, please be sure to actually follow this step. So for this step, I used a white pen to create the very small light reflections off of the eyelashes that the light source might create. Now, since this drawing isn't very big, the white lines are very, you can say they're very big. So at the end, I'll have to cover part of it again with a pencil, so that the white lines can be as thin as possible. If you don't have a white pen, don't worry. It is again totally optional. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But personally, I would really recommend if you're doing a really big project. For the white pens, you can also use the same technique we did for the mist effect, where you would create really fast and slick strokes, and it will create that really nice line of just white, and which would obviously add to the eyelashes. The final part, last but not least, is to add the finishing touches, add more shadows if you really need to, blend a bit more if you really want to. So in this case, I thought that the part under the curricula wasn't dark enough, so I went back, added some graphite and smoothed it out a bit more. And then after that, I really felt like the drawing was complete. So yeah, this is the video for the eye. I hope you enjoyed.